Welcome one and all to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 177. I'm the Indigenous Owl.
I'm the Angry Raccoon.
Bringing you the first recording in October 2021.
Yes, we are finally in the spooky month.
Yes, we certainly are.
And the first thing I want to say is, the audio is going to sound a bit odd because we do have Owl on this episode, and we are recording via Zoom, and my internet is not the one right now. Technical issues, and we're seconds into this podcast. So I'm going to apologize right now if you hear any weird cuts, if we sound a bit lagged or a bit odd or whatever, because the internet has just been a pain in the arse over the last 2 weeks, which is a bit ridiculous. And that kind of maybe links in with the fact that Facebook and I guess everything Facebook owns, like Instagram and WhatsApp, has kind of been down for a couple of days.
Yeah.
It's been a bit odd, and I know a lot of people have been panicking over this, mainly because I guess those sites are kind of like their life to an extent.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Everyone's just glued onto their phones, so without it, it's just like, what are they going to do?
Like, it was a bit funny that, and I mean, I'm not like a massive fan of like Facebook or Twitter, but it was interesting to see people on Twitter being like, oh man, you should delete Facebook, it's terrible. And I'm
really?
and I'm just like, you're one to talk.
Oh my god.
Yeah, people on Twitter were throwing shade, but they always throw shade at Facebook, and they're always like, man, Facebook's such like the worst and the most corrupt website ever. Not like Twitter.
Oh god.
Not like Twitter at all.
Oh my god.
But yeah, it's been a crazy couple of 2 weeks since the last podcast, because we've had that. We've also had the gas fuel shortages that have happened in, I think, mainly England, but I think it has affected the world as well.
Oh, right, okay. I didn't hear about it being affected everywhere else.
I think so, mainly because obviously the main issue, and I don't know everything about it because I don't drive, and it's not something that really matters to me. But I think because a lot of the actual drivers who bring the fuel over here didn't have the actual fuel to bring it over here, it caused issues for a lot of like shipping and merchandise and that kind of stuff. So, and then because people heard that there was a shortage, people went out and panic bought as much fuel as they could get.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's awesome. And it doesn't bode well with the fact that renewable and natural resources are running out.
Yeah, oh god, that's going to be a problem.
So, well done, guys. It's funny because although it was a bit manipulative how the media kind of covered it, it was quite funny how you never saw anyone under the age of 20 panic buying. Just going to throw that out there. I'm sure there were 20-year-olds with cars who were panic buying, but they didn't show anyone who was, under the age of 30. But anyway, and two other funnier things that happened is a lot of hacks have been happening recently. I don't know what's going on. The hackers have acquired new powers. Twitch got hacked twice, which was a bit ridiculous. The second time, which has only recently just happened, they, for some reason, put an enlarged image of Jeff Bezos' eyes on the home main page, which is quite foreboding and funny at the same time. Yeah, the second time they did it, I don't know if it's still there. I'm pretty sure you can look up screenshots of it, but the main homepage, the banner, is just an enlarged image of Jeff Bezos' eyes looking down at the content.
Oh no, I need to look this up.
Yeah, that's what they did. They're literally just trolling Twitch at this point now.
Oh my god.
But yeah, and also, I don't know all the information, but Red Dead Redemption 2, which is still a bit of a tongue twister, it's online, essentially got hacked as well, and they essentially put in two-headed skeletons that fight people in it. So yeah, it's quite appropriate for the season, but it's still really random.
Yeah.
It's been a very odd couple of days. But, Al, I guess I'll ask you what you've been up to since, I guess, the last podcast, or over the last course of weeks, I guess, or since the last podcast, I guess.
Yeah, okay. I haven't really been up to, like, too much, but in terms of, like, what games I've been playing, so I decided to actually revisit Yu-Gi-Oh! The Forbidden Memories on PS1.
Mm-hmm.
I completed it during the first lockdown, but I just decided to replay through the campaign mode again because I really enjoyed the game. And I just thought, I might as well just play, because there's a mode on it where you can do free duel, where you can basically just like win cards and things like that. But it does you have to put like a lot of hours. It's one of those games where it's very grindy, so you just have to like keep playing duels until you get really, really good cards. Because there's like another system in the game where you can actually win. Well, after every duel, you win 5-star chips. But to get like rare cards, like say for instance like Blue Eyes White Dragon or something like that, it's like so many star chips. It's like probably, I can't even say the number. It's basically like, I think it's like 99,000 basically 99,999 star chips you have to get to basically get that card. So it's like the developers were like, no, you're not going to be able to get star chips and buy the cards. You have to actually play the game properly in order to get these rare cards. So I do admire that about the game.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, yeah, it's not. I haven't really been playing anything else besides that game, pretty much. But that's it, really.
Okay, interesting. But it's good to see that you've, I guess, gone back to a classic for the most part. If you would regard it as a classic, I guess.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite games.
All right. I actually did, funny enough, play a game over the course of the last 2 weeks because it is October, and I said to myself, right, I got to play something for the season. And the game I decided to play was The Evil Within 2.
Oh, okay.
On PS4. Now, for those of you who are hardcore fans of the channel and the podcast, you will know that me and Ace did a playthrough of the first game a couple years ago, and we did not have a good time with that game. A lot of people did not enjoy the first game, and the first game is not a great game. The Evil Within 2 is the definition of improved in every single way. It honestly feels like the developers of this sequel looked at the first game and went, we gotta fix this. And it is a really interesting game, especially because you can kind of compare it to Resident Evil 8 Village. There's a lot of similarities going on between these two games, which is quite interesting. I'll explain the main concept really quick, so without spoiling too much. So you mainly play as Sebastian Castellanos, who is a detective, and he's kind of coming off the events of the first game, which had him essentially inside a serial killer's mind. And that's kind of where the game took place. And now, without spoiling too much, very early in the game, like literally the moment the game begins, you get a revelation and you find out that someone very important to him is within the system that they call STEM, which essentially allows people to connect to people's minds, and it essentially is a world within someone's mind. And so he goes back into STEM, which is what the system is called, in order to find this person, and he finds out very quickly that something very, very wrong has happened in this world, because they essentially try to create a everyday looking like suburban city, but it's obviously gone incredibly wrong. I keep saying that, to the point where you see that the world itself, or the town itself, has kind of fractured off. There's parts of it in the sky, for example. And one thing that is kind of stupid in terms of how, I guess, STEM works is if a serial killer or someone who has, I guess, a mental problem gets into STEM, it will affect the whole of the system negatively, essentially making them almost like a god to some extent.
Oh, wow.
Because, mental defects and mental issues or serial killers or psychopaths affect the system, because they essentially have dominancy over it. And the best thing about this game, which is quite funny as well, is there's not a lot of villains in this game. There's maybe about 3, and I can't say who they are for spoiler reasons, because all 3 of them are fantastic. But I do like the fact that the first 2 are pretty much JoJo villains.
That's interesting.
Like, one sounds like a JoJo villain, I won't say their name, and the second one literally is a JoJo villain. Like, they are very similar to a JoJo villain. I would say, actually, no, because that'd be too much of a spoiler. I won't say who it is. If you are looking forward or you're still watching JoJo, do not... Actually, no, I guess it's fine. Because it's not really a spoiler. But yeah, it's very interesting. But I actually love this game. They incorporated more of a stealth mechanic into this game.
Okay.
Where you can kind of, crawl and, assassinate the enemies. Some of the enemy types are really freakishly designed and kind of hard to actually take down. And it is nice to kind of have like an almost-ish open world aspect to a survival horror game where you don't know, like there's enemies everywhere and you can see them from a distance and you can creep past them, you can snipe them from a distance. It's really creative how they do everything, and it does have some generally disturbing and really creepy moments in the game. Like, the first main villain has a sort of monster that's kind of like his accomplice. It's called Obscura.
Okay.
If you're a big fan of Silent Hill, just type in The Evil Within Obscura, because that is the most Silent Hill thing I've seen in a long time. I honestly think the team who made this game should be making the next Silent Hill game, because they clearly have a better understanding of actual subtlety in monster design. And yeah, the story itself is actually really good. Like, the ending sequence of this game is the most badass thing ever. But if you have not played this game, I would say maybe skip the first one and play this one, especially if you liked Resident Evil 8, because I think it's a really good companion piece to it. And a very underrated game. Not too many people talk about it, but whenever they do, they say it's a very good game. Not the most polished game, though. There was a lot of glitches. My game did crash twice, though. Weirdly enough, it crashed in very similar places where I would walk. Here's how specific and odd the crashes were. The crashes only happened when I walked into a room where the final boss was and they started talking. It happened twice, that's when it crashed. I don't know what the hell that's about, because that's a really odd and specific glitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really odd. Like, the moment they would start talking and entered the room, crash. Thank goodness for autosave. But I think I've talked long enough about The Evil Within. Definitely go play it. But I think we're going to move on to actual stuff that happened over the last 2 weeks. And I think we're going to talk about what happened over the last fortnight. And that is going to be the fact that Sora from the Kingdom Hearts series is the last character to join Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Which, of course, given that it's Smash Bros., was very controversial and a lot of people were upset. Yeah. I kind of
didn't actually know that.
I think people are always upset no matter who goes into the game, because it's never who they want it to be. And I think as a quick note, I'll kind of explain why characters like Sora and Sephiroth and some of the more questionable characters have gone in, and why they never put in the characters people want. Think of it from the perspective of Nintendo, a Japanese company. When they actually see the fan reception and they see who they want to be put in, and you people are listing people like Goku and Shrek.
Shrek! Oh no!
Yeah, people have actually suggested Shrek should be put in, and they've made the justification that Shrek's been in plenty of video games.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
So he's technically a video game character. Same with Goku. Goku has more video games than Mario, so therefore he should be in Smash.
Oh, God.
When you make suggestions like that, Nintendo looks at that and goes, Goku's not a video game character, he's a cartoon character. We're going to ignore what the West is saying and put in who we can get the rights to. So, pro tip, if you actually want a video game character to get into the game, maybe actually recommend a video game character.
Exactly.
Other than that rant, I do understand the disappointment. I was surprised it was him too, because I thought we were done with Final Fantasy. Like, I honestly thought we were going to get someone different. Someone who actually played different. Someone who was from a different franchise. And let's be honest, Sephiroth was a bit of a waste of a character slot. I know people like Final Fantasy VII, and I know people like Sephiroth for some reason, but he really didn't need to go in, because he's basically Cloud. So I really don't understand why he's in there. And it honestly makes me think that Nintendo and Square Enix have a pretty good relationship. I mean, there's now 3 Final Fantasy characters in the game. And I know what some people are thinking, Sora's not a Final Fantasy character. Yes, he is. If Cloud and Sephiroth were in Kingdom Hearts, then he's a Final Fantasy character. But yeah. It is quite interesting as well. No Goofy, no Donald Duck, or any Disney music. Probably because Nintendo isn't about to pay extortionistic prices for it, which obviously makes sense. And I honestly thought at first it was going to be the main protagonist from Dark Souls when I saw the trailer. The main reason is because in the trailer you see like a faint like light in the distance, and I honestly thought it was like a bonfire. And I got like really hyped for a moment, and I was like, oh my god, this is going to be like the most mind-blowing like reveal ever. And to be fair, like, in my opinion, Dark Souls is more culturally significant than the Kingdom Hearts series. Like, in my opinion, there isn't anyone who hasn't heard the song, like, and I'm gonna probably butcher the pronunciation of this song, Vortit of Borland Valley, or like, you know, Great Grey Wolf Stiff. Most people have heard those songs. They've been used countless times. You know, the mainstream knows the series as the hardest video game ever created. You know, it's inspired tons of games. Tons of games have taken mechanics from it. And the main character from Dark Souls honestly would have been a unique pick, because he could have used his sword and his shield. He could have cast magic. He could have done the iconic roll. And he could have even had the mechanic where he drinks from the Estus Flask, which is essentially his health, reduce 10% of his damage, adding a more risk and reward element to his character or his playstyle. I honestly think it was a missed opportunity that he wasn't added into the game, in my opinion. But Al, do you have any thoughts on Sora, your favorite video game character, being in Smash?
Nah, not really. I don't really care.
Fair enough. I think a lot of people were very underwhelmed, and I think what annoys people more about this pick is the fact that he's the last character going in. Like, no one else is going in until, I guess, the next Smash game. So it doesn't feel like a very fitting end to some extent. It is a bit of a shame. But let's move on to some trailers and some news and some topics, I guess. First trailer we got is for Critical Role, The Legend of Vox Machina, which, I'll be honest, the only thing I know about Critical Role is that it's on YouTube and that there's an art book. That's it. That's the extent of my knowledge for Critical Role. I don't really know what it is, but judging from the trailer, I would imagine it's a period piece mystery horror novel. Obviously, I'm joking. It's obviously some kind of D&D series, I think. But yeah, the opening was actually really well animated. It's actually pretty epic in tone and scale. And I actually got excited for the series, despite not knowing what the hell anything is or who anyone is.
Yeah, I gotta say I agree with you on that.
Yeah, it was pretty well done. I believe Studio Grancool provided the animation and cleanup for the opening, but it's going to be Titmouse Studios who are going to be animating the series, as far as I'm aware. And they're a studio who've worked on a lot of projects, from Metalocalypse to Black Dynamite, tons of Adult Swim shows. They've even done a lot of animated sequences for a lot of live-action series, such as Loki and WandaVision. So you've definitely seen their animation. Definitely look up the list of things they've done. They've done a ton of stuff, and what's really great about this studio as well is, for a Western studio, they have a great anime-inspired style, which kind of becomes their own in a great sense. Any other thoughts on this trailer, though, Al?
No, not really.
Okay. But yeah, really interested. It comes out next year, early next year, so fingers crossed it's actually pretty good. Next trailer, I believe you have, Al.
Yes, so I'll be introducing the film Red Rocket, which is essentially an American comedy drama by Sean Baker. He's previously worked on like independent feature films. From what I got, there wasn't really a lot to a lot of info about the film, so I just had to make out what I could see from the trailer.
Fair enough.
But basic premise of the film is that basically the main character, his name is Mikey, and he's just an ordinary, quote unquote, man coming back to his hometown trying to look for a regular job. A lot of people don't really want to take him on because it seems like he hasn't been employed for basically 17 years, so it's just like, no, we don't really want you here. And but then he's in the middle of an interview and he's like, yeah, I used to be an adult film actor, and it's just like, oh, okay, right, that's random, but okay. But my thoughts on this film is, it seems like it's going to be like a fun comedy that will have it feels like it will have like an emotional roller coaster within it, especially the scenes where he's interacting with his wife. It feels like it sounds like they're in a toxic marriage from what it looks like. And then Mikey seems to take an interest into this girl who's introduces herself as Strawberry. She seems like a more free-spirited woman that's just kind of supporting whatever it is that he does, and it's go for it or whatever. She just seems like one of those type of people, and I feel like maybe there's probably going to be a romantic relationship that develops between them. I feel like this film will be good to watch, considering the writer's up and the writer and director's up and coming, and yeah, I'd like to see this film do well. But yeah, that's all I've really got to say on it, really.
Yeah, I think I can kind of echo some of the things you said. Yeah, it definitely looks like a pretty entertaining and kind of almost coming of age story despite the actual age of the main character. I know Sean Baker's a very interesting film director because he did the film Tangerine and the Florida Project, which are films that kind of look at a topic that he really likes to explore, which is essentially like trashy lifestyles in an extent. And it looks like he's definitely sticking with that, but he's also kind of doing something a little bit different in terms of how it's shot and how it's structured. He wants to tell like a grander story from what I can see. And it's beautifully shot so far, and it looks very natural. It doesn't look like a film, which is pretty cool in some aspect. And already, the main character, did you say his name was Billy? Mikey, yeah, played by Simon Rex. His character already is really likable, despite not being the greatest person ever.
Yeah.
So already the film has that going for it. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this because I really like Sean Baker's films. I think he's a really good like director so far. Like 3 films ish in, and he's on a winning streak in my opinion. I guess we'll move on to the next trailer, which is a smaller one. We've got quite a few small ones until we get to the big one, and that is going to be for Dave Chappelle, The Closer, which is the final Netflix special that is already out right now, so you can go and watch it. But there was something pretty profound and kind of conclusive about this trailer. Like maybe it was like the piano cover of like Pixies' Where Is My Mind, or like the visual of Dave driving in the sunset. It honestly felt like the end of an era, and it honestly kind of had a very like powerful yet funny kind of vibe about it, especially given who's in the trailer, which we won't spoil, although the trailer itself does spoil who's in it, but I think it still works as a great surprise. Anything else you want to add to this trailer? Because it is a very brief one. No. It's purely just a mention. Go watch the special, go watch this trailer, go enjoy it. Next trailer we're getting into the spooky stuff now, finally. I know you guys were sitting there in anticipation. We're finally here. First trailer we're going to talk about is going to be for The Deep House. Now, this film already has a really strong concept for a horror film, and it has a classic ghost story setup, which I like, which essentially seems to be about a group of people who go underwater to this house, which has apparently been perfectly preserved, and they kind of explore and find out why. And the whole film is found footage, but also underwater. I'd imagine they've probably used some kind of studio for this, but this is one of those films that I'd love to see the making of, as it's technically already really impressive how they've done it, and I'm surprised no one has done this yet. Maybe because it's probably really tricky to do, but let's see if they can accomplish it. The film honestly reminds me of another found footage called As Above, So Below from 2014, which had a somewhat similar premise where it had like a camera crew kind of go into the catacombs of Paris, and shit gets wild. That's what I'm going to say. But yeah, anything you want to add to this trailer?
I actually did want to add, when they are exploring this underwater place, it did kind of remind me, even though it's very random, but it reminded me of like a section in Tomb Raider 2 where she's in the underwater part. It just kind of reminded me when they're exploring it. Just, I don't know how I got the correlation there, but yeah, I don't know, I got that kind of vibe off it. But yeah, that's all I had to say.
I can see that because some parts of the earlier Tomb Raider games did kind of have like an atmospheric and kind of creepy vibe to it.
Yeah.
I would say I can definitely see that. And oh boy, Owl, I believe you have the next trailer.
So I'm going to be introducing Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City, Size, because this film is basically a terrible adaptation of Capcom's Resident Evil games. This film focuses on the first 2 games. This film is absolutely going to be a mess. Watching the trailer, nothing is convincing. The acting is so stale. No one looks like they know what they're doing. The film really reminds me of how the live-action Ghost in the Shell film is. It's basically how I've linked the 2 together was basically like how the Ghost in the Shell film basically is like a mashup of the first film in '95, the second film, Innocence, and then the first series of Ghost in the Shell. And I feel like that's what they're going with this, where they were going with this film. And that Ghost in the Shell was a mess. So I feel like there's nothing good to come from this. But I did look up a little bit into it, and I originally the actual writer that did the Mortal Kombat film that came out this year was actually interesting. It would have been interesting if he did stay on, but I don't know if that might have been for the better that he dropped off, because the script in the Mortal Kombat film wasn't that great. So I don't know if that would have made the film worse or better. I have no idea. But yeah, that's all I have to say about this terrible adaptation. Raccoon, any thoughts?
I think you pretty much hit the nail on the coffin, but I just want to get you to repeat that, because I think the audio kind of glitched out really briefly. You mentioned that the writer from the new Mortal Kombat worked on this film, and I think you cut out after that. Could you, just repeat that just for people to hear?
Yeah. Oh, no problem. Basically, so the same writer so the writer that did the Mortal Kombat film that came out this year, he was originally on this project when it was first, I think it was back in 2017, but then he dropped off. So I was saying that maybe the Mortal Kombat film, the script in that film wasn't that great, so I'm thinking maybe it might have been for the better that he did drop off. I'm not too sure if it would have done the film this Resident Evil adaptation any better. I don't know if it would have made it any better, or if it would have been for the worse. I have no idea. But yeah, I just thought, I might as well just do a little bit of research into the whole project. But yeah, I've got nothing else good to say about this film.
That's interesting that one person linked to two adaptations that no one wanted, was writing both of them at some point. It's very bizarre. Whether it was for the better or for the worse, who knows? But I guess to quote Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle, I expected nothing and I'm still let down. There is so much wrong with this trailer, I could write an essay on it. So I kind of I've written a page on this. That's how bad it is. But let's start with some really glaring issues. So the first thing, they used a meme song for the trailer.
Seriously?
Yes, technically they've used a meme song for the trailer. The song they use in this trailer is Four Non Blondes' What's Up. Now, that song itself might not necessarily be a meme, but the song is famous because of a very famous meme regarding He-Man, which I think some people have seen. If you type in He-Man, what's going on, you'll know exactly what I mean. So when I was watching the trailer, you can just tell how incompetent these people are behind this series, that they didn't actually look up the song to see if it had any other meanings or correlations, because it is a bizarre song to choose for a Resident Evil film, and all I can think about when watching this trailer was He-Man dancing. It's quite ironic that in the song, one of the lines is literally, "Hey, what's going on?" Because what the hell is going on in this trailer? They've just mashed the first two games together.
Yeah, basically.
Why? And judging from the trailer and from what I've seen, it looks like it's not even gonna go Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2. It honestly looks like it's gonna start in Raccoon City, then they're gonna go to the Spencer Mansion. So if you're trying to be faithful to the franchise, why would you reorder the films? And people have also implied that it's going to tackle Resident Evil 3 as well.
Oh no!
There's implications that they're going to maybe tackle Resident Evil 3 as well, which I guess kind of makes sense because Resident Evil 3 takes place during Resident Evil 2 or before and after, depending on how you want to look at it. But I don't understand why they do that, because the first two games would work as a singular film. They've just kind of grabbed recognizable references and visuals in order to get fanboys to clap, like, "Oh, look, it's Zombie 1. I remember that from the first game. This film's gonna be good." As well as they kind of just want, journalists to, make clickbait links and articles and, videos of top 10 things you missed in the Resident Evil trailer. Did you see it said Itchy Tasty on the window? That's a reference to Resident Evil 1. It's I get it. I've played the games. I'm a fan. The fact that you use Itchy Tasty in the wrong context isn't faithful, it's just aggravating. If you're going to be original, maybe do something original.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe just don't make the film, because here's the thing, they don't care. about the Resident Evil franchise. And with a lot of these remakes and adaptations, you always hear, oh, the people behind it, they're big fans of it, they care, they're being faithful. And I say BS to that. Because, in my opinion, if you were a fan of the Resident Evil franchise or anything else that's being remade or readapted for a Netflix series, which so many of these people claim, you wouldn't be damaging a franchise you love. You would stay clear from it. Like, let me ask you a question really quickly, Owl. If you love something, would you throw it in the dirt?
No.
Another question. Would you destroy something that you loved just to remake it?
No, absolutely not.
Oh, okay. So why are you doing a adaptation of Resident Evil when you so claim to enjoy it so much?
I don't know. I don't know why they would do that, honestly.
Money. That's why. And because Capcom haven't learnt their lesson yet. That's why. Let me give you guys a really quick fun fact. So obviously we all know about the terrible 2000s Resident Evil films, which have nothing to do with Resident Evil. Originally, guess who was going to direct the Resident Evil film? Any guesses?
No idea.
George A. Romero, who was the director of Night of the Living Dead. The very film and concept that inspired Resident Evil, and Capcom turned down his script.
No!
Yeah, they did.
Oh, God.
And you know what hurts even more?
Go ahead.
George A. Romero did a live-action trailer / advertisement for Resident Evil 2.
Oh my God.
And it is fantastic. It's like maybe about a minute long, but the casting and the cinematography is way better.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend. Just type in George A. Romero Resident Evil 2.
Sure.
It is amazing, and it's so faithful, and it's like so 90s as well. Like it sells the game perfectly. Yeah, like so much bothers me about this like trailer. Like the over-reliance of CGI, and it just looks ugly. They reference Umbrella way too much in this trailer. Like, there's no mystery.
They do.
There's no mystery as to what's going on, which is partly because they're simply going, oh, everyone knows Umbrella and Resident Evil, so we don't need to set up how evil they are. But then again, they've kind of forgot that there are people that don't know anything about Resident Evil. So they've kind of failed on that front. Also, I guess it's a slight issue as well. Claire already knows Umbrella is evil. Why does she know they're evil when this is supposed to be the beginning of the story? Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because in my theory, she's going to somehow find out that they're evil in, like, the first 5 minutes of the film for this film to work. Which doesn't quite work. Yeah, they go to the mansion and they split up. Why would you do that if you know Umbrella is evil and you know there's zombies?
Exactly.
And also, another thing that bothers me, and it's more of a gameplay thing, is they see a liquor and they run away from it.
Yeah. Oh, God.
You're not supposed to run away from liquors, and they should know, if anything, just by looking at a liquor, it doesn't have eyes. It can't see you. Oh my God. It's really bad. I will give this trailer one thing. I will give it one thing, and that is that the practical effects of Lisa Trevor look decent. I will give it that. It doesn't look amazing, but it looks decent, and I think the actress who is playing Lisa Trevor, I think she's a pretty cool person. That's the only thing I'll give this trailer. If anything comes out being good, it will be her performance. And also, it's kind of weird how they're doing a Resident Evil 1 and 2 film, and they've not include Leon in the film. Like, he's not in the trailer.
That's actually a good point.
Really bizarre. He's not in the trailer. I am joking. He is in the trailer. He's the guy with the long hair. The long black hair.
Oh, shame.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't even know that was Leon, did you?
I didn't even know that was Leon.
You didn't even notice that Chris was in the trailer as well, did you?
Nope.
Yeah, that's how good this film is.
Just Claire.
Just Claire. It's only Claire's in this film.
Yeah, only Claire. I didn't even realise.
And I know why they've made Claire the main character, because they want, like, immunity from criticism. So if anyone criticizes the film, it's because you're a sexist. And you don't want to see women succeed in films. It's not gonna work here when very few people actually care about this film. People are not that passionate about the Resident Evil film that they're going to defend it on the merits of sexism and feminism. But anyway, speaking of lovely ladies, we have the final trailer to talk about, and that is going to be Netflix and Chill Meet Dr. Elvira, which is the trailer for a miniseries that Elvira herself, the Mistress of Darkness, aka Cassandra Peterson, is going to be doing for Netflix over the course of October, I guess. And essentially the main premise is that every Sunday there will be a new episode of Elvira teaching you about like the medical and scientific benefits of horror and horror films, while recommending Netflix films and shows for the season, which is a pretty awesome concept if you ask me. And I'm sure some people maybe have never heard of Elvira, but they've probably seen her because she is a bit of an iconic character. She's a horror icon. You know, she starred in many a film. She had her own TV show. She was a hostess hosting horror anthologies and other films. She's been in her own film as well, because during the 80s and 90s, if you were a popular character, you got your own film. That's just how it worked. And which you don't see nowadays anymore. But what's also pretty cool as well, I should mention, is on the streaming service Shudder, she's going to be celebrating 40 years of the Elvira character. And the other thing worth noting as well is the lady herself this year is 70 years old.
She looks so good for her age.
Exactly. She has looked after herself. Like, if you saw her for the first time, you wouldn't expect that she's 70 years old.
No.
She looks like she's 40, if anything.
Exactly. That's what I thought. I was like, no, she must be 40 at least.
Yeah, there are celebrities in their 40s that look terrible. So clearly Elvira has made some kind of pact with the devil to look that good. Clearly she must have.
She's a vampire.
Well, I think she's technically a witch, but yeah.
Oh yeah, but you know.
Makes sense.
Vampire aging.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, Elvira, you look good. Let us know your secrets. But yeah, that's pretty much going to bring us to the discussion of this podcast, which of course is going to be Halloween themed, and that is going to be perfect recommendations for Halloween 2021 edition. We didn't do anything for October last year because COVID, so we're doing it this year, which I'm looking forward to, and I decided to pick something really simple and really easy for the most part. And essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be recommending anything that we think is just appropriate, whether horror or non-horror related, for the month of October. And I guess we're going to start with you, Al. What would be your first recommendation for someone to watch during October?
I would like to recommend a film. Well, my first recommendation is a film. I'd like to recommend Van Helsing, the one in 2004. Oh
yeah.
It's one of my favorite fantasy horror films. Actually, growing up, me and Obsidian used to watch this film so many times growing up. I actually watched it the other day, and there's certain scenes that just kind of, because it's like a really gothic kind of fantasy horror film, especially like the scene where they're in the masquerade ball. Like, I just felt like, I don't know, something just charming about it, because you just don't really see masquerade balls nowadays. It's just a very rare thing to see. So just seeing that, and the way the film was shot was really well done. And especially like the things that are included in it, like vampires, werewolves, Frankenstein. I just feel like it all just links to Halloween. And I would say this film to date has the best looking werewolves.
Really? That's a bold statement, Al. That's a bold statement.
Best werewolves.
That's a bold statement, because I can start listing some films. Let me think of a good one. Probably one of my favorite werewolves, Dog Soldiers.
Dog Soldiers. Oh, I think I watched that film once years ago.
Yeah, I like the werewolves in Dog Soldiers. And a couple other werewolves, which I will maybe kind of reference in one of my picks, but we'll see. That's a bold statement. Best be careful with that one. But that's an interesting pick, because I haven't seen the film in a long time, but I remember the scene. I know it's an old film, so spoilers for a 2000 film. The scene where they're like fighting the banshees or whatever they are.
Oh yeah.
I think that scene is really well done. Like, that's a really well done scene. But yeah, no, I agree with that pick. Really good pick. I'll give one, and this is going to be a TV series, and this is more in respect and appraisal of this TV series, which I highly recommend watching. But I'm not going to go into every single detail, obviously, because it is a 4-season long series, and that is going to be for Our Real Monsters, which was a Nickelodeon show that ran from 1994 to 1997. And the basic premise of this series follows 3 monsters, Icarus, Ablina, and Crumb, who essentially attend a monster school and go to the surface, because they live underground under the dump of the city, to essentially scare humans. Sounds a lot like Monsters, Inc. But, and there's a few other comparisons that you can notice if you watch the series. And it is a really interesting series. I think is very underrated because it is a very 90s show, and it does kind of have like a slightly more kind of gross-ish look. It was done by the same studio who did like Rugrats and a few other shows like Cappy something. I can't remember their name, but you know the people who made like Rugrats and that they made this series. And it's a series I really love, mainly because the characters are fantastic. Like who was formerly the main character, Icarus, he's like this red little goblin monster kind of creature who essentially has like big shoes to fill because his father was like regarded as one of the greatest, monsters or scarers ever, very similar to Monsters Inc. So he's a really interesting character, and he has like the ability where he can like, his eyes turn red and he can enlarge in size, and he's a very interesting character. Then you have Crumb, who's essentially like this weird humanoid creature that holds his eyes in his hands. It's like really freakish, but it's really clever. But he's like the definition of like a gentle giant kind of character. Like he's very soft-spoken, and he'll do anything for his friends. And yeah, he's got like some really unique mechanics on how he can scare people, like with his eyes and stuff like that. And then you have the final character who essentially became the main character, being Ablina. Now, Ablina's a really hard character to describe because even to this day, I don't know what she is. So I would highly recommend looking up an image of her and trying to figure it out. But from what I can tell, she is essentially a black and white, upside down, candy cane creature with big red lips, gapped teeth, and stalk-like eyes. A very interesting design she has. So interesting enough that, fun fact, she is one of 2 fictional characters, that scared me as a child. Because
She sounds scary.
She is scary, but she's actually really nice. But she's
okay.
But she's a very good monster at scaring. She's essentially like the best student in the school. And one thing I do like about her, which I'm surprised I've never seen another character like her before, is she comes from a wealthy family, but she herself is not a spoilt brat. Like, she actually is a good student, and she's a really good scarer. A couple of things she can do, she's a master of, like, shape-shifting. A couple of things that she can do is that she can kind of pretend to be other items, and then when humans pick them up, they obviously realize it's not a screwdriver or whatever, and they scream and run in horror. She's a master of shape-shifting. She can also take out her guts and show them. Like, she can take her guts out of her mouth and present them to a human, and they'd run away screaming, obviously. And the weirdest thing and the most interesting thing she can do is she can give humans nightmares by essentially putting her finger in their ear and tickling their brain.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's really creepy, but I think that's really creative at the same time. She's a very interesting character because she has a really interesting and odd cadence to her voice. It's very hard to describe. I would highly recommend looking up a video of her, but she kind of sounds like a very soft-spoken, slightly high-pitched British lady. She's very odd. Her voice actress was Christina Cadaver. I can't remember. Definitely Christina something. And most people know her as the voice of, like, Chucky from Rugrats.
Aha!
Yeah, that's who she voiced. And she's voiced a lot of other characters throughout her time. She unfortunately passed away back in 2014, but she had such an interesting voice and interesting cadence with this character. And the character herself is very interesting, and I'm honestly surprised she isn't like some kind of symbol for role model for girls or like feminism, because she was all about girl power, and she was pretty much the main character, a female in a 90s cartoon. How many other characters can you think that are like that from the 90s?
None.
Not a lot, exactly. Very interesting character and a really fun series. I'd highly recommend watching a couple episodes. You can find them. Just watch a few. It's a really fun show. It's actually dated pretty well. The animation can be a bit odd at certain points. It depends on how you're watching it and where you're watching it, but really good show. I'd really recommend it. Al, your next one?
My next one is actually just an episode from a series.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually SpongeBob SquarePants, in particular the episode Scaredy Pants in season 1. It's the Halloween episode.
Classic.
I had this taped on VHS like years ago. Just like was recording it and everything. I really enjoyed this specific episode because SpongeBob is out trick-or-treating, trying to scare people. He's dressed as a ghost, but people don't take him seriously, and they're like calling him the haunted mattress because obviously he's square.
Square, yeah.
And he's at home, and then Patrick just randomly shows up and he makes SpongeBob like scared and everything. And SpongeBob is like upset about like how he's not really taken seriously. So Patrick is like got like a ghost puppet on his hand, and it's like then SpongeBob realizes, oh yeah, like the reason why people's like not taking him seriously is because he's still square and he needs to be more round.
Because he's pretending to be the Flying Dutchman, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. The Flying Dutchman. Sorry, not the ghost. And then basically, I'm not going to say what happens at the end, but it's just a funny plot twist at the end.
Yeah, no, don't spoil the ending.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil it. It's a great episode, and I definitely think it's nice to just watch because it is pretty spooky.
That is a classic episode from like 90s Nickelodeon era.
Yeah.
Like really well done, and the ending is fantastic. If you've never watched the episode, please watch that episode. It's awesome. I'm surprised it's not referenced more.
Nah, yeah, it's not.
Really good pick. Funny enough, my second pick is actually an episode as well from The Simpsons, and that is going to be Treehouse of Horror, number 6, more accurately, episode 6, season 7. Now, obviously, it's somewhat of a bit of a tradition that The Simpsons have their annual Halloween episode titled The Treehouse of Horror, and there are a lot of really good ones, especially during the first era of Simpsons, where they were a little bit more creative and a little bit more actual horror-based parody. So they parodied a lot of like actual horror films and episodes of The Twilight Zone and kind of made them their own. And this is the 6th one, and it's one of my favorites. Not my favorite, I'll probably talk about that another time, but I'm not going to talk about all 3 segments. I'll quickly go over the 2 that I'm not going to be talking mostly about. So the first one we have is Attack of the 50-Foot Eyesores, which in my opinion is the weakest episode in the first section. Basically, a lot of the statues and tower figures in the town come to life. It's a decent episode with a great ending. It has a lot of lines. I don't think it's that strong of an episode. The last segment, which is Homer Cubed, which I think is maybe one of the most famous ones. This is essentially the segment where Homer gets stuck in the 4th dimension and he becomes all like 3D and CGI. I think a lot of people have probably seen this episode a lot because it's actually quite a famous segment. The animation is still pretty impressive to this day, and I always found the ending of that episode to be actually quite freaky in some sense. Like the whole episode is freaky itself to see a character you've watched for years essentially in a new environment in a 3D setting. And I think where the horror kind of comes from is the fact that Homer's essentially stuck in that dimension and they can't get him out. And I always found that concept really freaky, and even the ending is freaky, which I won't spoil because it's still pretty impressive to this day, but it is a very odd visual, let's just say. But as you could probably imagine, the segment I am going to talk about is of course going to be Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace, which is of course a reference to Nightmare on Elm Street. This episode actually did kind of creep me out when I was a child. Like, this is, in my opinion, probably one of the scariest things in The Simpsons ever. And the basic premise is that you find out that the character groundskeeper Willie, who died many years ago in the context of this episode, essentially vowed revenge on all the parents' children, because during a meeting, he burned to death, unfortunately. And what's kind of funny and kind of messed up about the whole scene is he accidentally gets set on fire, and he bursts into the room during the meeting and he's like, I'm on fire, I'm gonna die. And Principal Skinner pretty much goes, Willie, would you sit down, we're having a meeting. So he just sits down calmly and waits for them to continue the meeting while he's on fire.
Oh jeez.
And what ends up happening is he like burns to death. But one scene that really freaked me out was he's essentially like a charred corpse, and he has like glowing red eyes, and he literally says something along the lines of, I'll get revenge on you through your kids, and I'll attack them in the only way where you can't protect them, in their dreams. And it's kind of like a chilling concept, especially when you realize that Groundskeeper Willie isn't playing. Like, in the episode, he kills one of the main characters in a pretty horrible way too. Like, he legitimately dies in the classroom. And not even in a like, oh, he falls over and dies. Like, he chokes to death and dies. And it's quite awful. They do kind of make a joke out of it where they wheel his body out of the classroom and the cloth on top of him accidentally falls down and you just see his petrified body and the children scream. And then Principal Skinner's like, get him out of here quick. And then you hear like children screaming in the background. He goes, not through kindergarten. It is an interesting concept, and it has probably one of the funniest lines in the whole series, where Bart and Lisa come to the realization and they figure out that, do you know what this, they realize that the next time we go to sleep, we could die. And Abe Simpson, who is essentially, their grandfather, goes, welcome to my world. Which is quite funny. And I do really like this segment. I won't spoil the ending because it does have a pretty good resolution, but really awesome segment. Really love this episode and I wanted to recommend it because it always makes me think of Halloween, that episode in particular. Al, do you want to hit us with the last recommendation you have?
Yeah, so my last recommendation is a music video. It is by the Chemical Brothers, Hey Boys, Hey Girls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was actually watching it yesterday, funny thing, so I know it's a bit odd because it's just like, you don't think of Halloween when you watch it, but I just thought, I don't know why, it just kind of gave me that creepy vibe. But basically, in the music video, it's about this class, they're going on a school trip, and this girl at the back of the coach is basically looking at, like, she's like fascinated with her hands, but she's actually reading a book on like the human skeleton bones. And this, the probably boy is known as probably the class bully. He spits on the book and just smiles as he walks off, as a jerk would. And they are in the Natural History Museum, and basically he scares her again, but with a skeleton mask on, and she chases after him and unfortunately falls and fractures her wrist. So it later skips to her going to the hospital and getting the x-ray done on her hand and her wrist area. And it then goes to her brushing her teeth, and then she envisions herself as a skeleton, and it shows her as a skeleton in the mirror. And then the video does like a huge time skip, and it goes to the future of future her, and she's in like a nightclub, and basically she can just see, like, when she's in the club, she just sees everyone as skeletons, which is actually very creepy. And she like basically is just leaving the club, and she gets into the taxi, and basically the taxi driver's like, where do you want to go, kind of thing. And it's just it is very, very creepy. I just it just kind of, when watching it, just kind of gives me the feeling of like the kind of gritty London vibe. It feels very it just feels very appropriate to think it's Halloween, because it's like got a very darker tone to the music video has a very darker tone to it. So I thought it'd be pretty cool.
That is a really interesting pick, because I've never really seen that video as creepy. I've always seen it as like cool, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And like weird to some extent, because how do you come up with the idea of girl sees everyone as skeletons? Yeah. It is interesting. Very interesting, because the other music video that this reminds me of is if you've ever seen the music video for The Prodigy, Smack My Bitch Up. I know that's a pretty extreme...
No, I can't remember the video very well for that one, no.
Yeah, some reason that video always reminds me of that other video for some reason. And that video is more in like POV, and that one's like, it's kind of got like I wouldn't say a frightening element, but there is like as you mentioned, a very gritty kind of London club vibe to it. That music video does have. Yeah. But yeah, really interesting pick. Yeah, that's an awesome one. My last one is actually going to be a film from 2007, and is going to be Trick or Treat. Now, I can't remember the director of this film, but he also went on to do Krampus, and I believe he went on to do Kong, King of Monsters. He did something with Godzilla or King Kong that wasn't very great. But Trick or Treat, which in my opinion and a lot of people's opinion is the best horror anthology thing ever, because it doesn't essentially split each story into segments. Every story is coherent and links together perfectly. The basic premise of this story is it takes place on Halloween night, of course, and it follows the story of a couple of people who are out trick-or-treating or partying. And what's great about this concept is it kind of goes back and forth between a couple of stories in between other people's stories, which is great. And it kind of encompasses the whole idea of Halloween being this very magical night where only certain things happen, which you very rarely see in a lot of like fiction that tackles, Halloween. And there's a lot of really great concepts I like. For example, there's a group of girls who are out partying and, they're kind of getting their costumes on. They've got to get those very sensual, somewhat slutty costumes because, they're going to get some guys tonight. And that leads to a very interesting direction. There's also one story that follows a group of kids who essentially decide to go and explore a area where apparently a bus crashed and killed dozens of kids, and you can apparently hear where like the ghosts of those children are, which is a really interesting and creepy concept. And another story which kind of almost ties the whole thing together, where it deals with an old man who pretty much hates Halloween. He won't even give children like candy, and he kind of gets his comeuppance, let's just say, in a very interesting scene. But all the segments kind of blend together really well, and you see like a lot of really interesting concepts with some very classical aspects of Halloween. Like, it's both very new and old. There is a very traditional and modern sense with Halloween. Like, there's this really nice, almost like Louisiana Mardi Gras feeling happening, where there's like a street party just happening in the background while there's people in the neighborhood, setting up for Halloween and, giving children candy. Meanwhile, you've got the children going off and exploring. You've got the old man who's kind of being bitter and angry. And all the while, you have a very mysterious child wearing almost like a pajama costume and a sack over his head, kind of just wandering around the town. And that character himself has kind of gone on to be a little bit of a horror icon. I can't remember his name, but you've probably seen him, and he's a very interesting character, especially when he gets explained. But yeah, I'd really recommend this film. I watch it almost every Halloween. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to be watching it soon. But yeah, I really want to recommend this film once again because I think it's a absolutely fantastic film. But yeah, anything else you want to add to this podcast or this discussion?
No.
Fair enough. All right. So, yeah, we're pretty much at the end of this podcast. I got a few things I want to say really, really quickly. The next podcast might sound different as well again, because something pretty important is happening over the next 2 weeks, which is a bit crazy. The next 2 weeks are going to be insane. I'm so busy, and I've got so many things I am doing and so many things I want to do. I always get busy around October to December time. That's just how it goes. So I'm hoping that I can get a podcast done and hopefully make it as interesting and as special as this one was. Yeah, and I guess we'll talk about the video of the episode, which is going to be Slow Tie featuring Skepta with Cancelled. This music video came out back in February, and I've been saving this video for October specifically. When you watch the music video, you'll know exactly why I've been saving it for October. It definitely is a very appropriate video, and it has some really great references in it, and that's all I'll say. Definitely watch the music video. But yeah, I guess I will start to end this podcast like I usually do. I want to thank Al for being on this episode.
Okay.
I didn't quite hear you there, Al.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. No worries.
Yeah, you kind of just said something, but yeah, it was fun to have you on this on this episode. And yeah, I guess I will end this podcast like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon.
I'm the Indigenous Owl.
And I will see you on the next podcast.